Good morning, Snipes Academy. It is Monday, September 20th. I'm Mr. Yates, and this is Snipes Daily News. All right, everybody, welcome back to school after a weekend. I do hope you had a nice, restful weekend. This is the last week before intersession, so make sure you get as much learning in as you can. Let's go ahead and get into it with some weather. So as of this recording, it is 73 degrees and cloudy. It probably will continue to be cloudy for the rest of the day, but there's no more than a 7 or 8% chance of rain during school hours, so very unlikely that we'll get any rain. For today's This Day in History segment, we're going to talk about George Washington's farewell address. So yesterday, on September 19th, that day in history, 1796, President George Washington, our first president, gives his farewell address. It came as a great shock to many people in the Congress and in the United States that George Washington would step down. All things considered, he probably could have been president for as long as he wanted to, because at the time there were no rules about term limits, and he was an extremely popular and effective president. Now, I go into detail about George Washington and his decision to step down and not make himself a monarch. And if you want to see that video, you can click the link below. So if you want to hear that, click there. However, we're just going to talk about his farewell address today, which has a couple of main points. So in his farewell address to the nation, he had three main points that he wanted to get across. Let's see if we listened as a nation to any of them. Number one, unity. The best way to make our country as strong as possible would be to stay as one union. At the time there were regions. There was the East and West and North and South, and there were a lot of differences, and there kind of still are. But he said that the main strength of the United States would be as one country. To a certain extent, we did keep that one, mostly because we fought a giant civil war in 1865, and just over that fact, like, should we be two separate countries, one free, one slave, or should we stay together? Obviously, the North refused to take that separation and won that war, thankfully. So we stayed together. So that's so far so good. One, yes. Number two, avoid partisan fighting. This means that in his address he said that having a very strong allegiance to or opposition to a political party is a very bad idea. He said that this could cause disunity and make people think that you can either alienate people or seclude people to the point that they're only thinking one way. Did we follow this rule? Wrong. I think that's probably not something that we did. But in fact, to give ourselves a small break, it was sort of happening from the very beginning. You had the Federalist Party, which ended up becoming the Republican Party. And then you had the Democratic Republican Party, which ended up becoming the Democratic Party. So, although we still have not to this day listened to George Washington's words, it was sort of happening already, which is probably why he attempted to address it. How can we learn from that in our personal lives? Well, try not to form cliques, The dribblers can hang out with the band people. That's okay. Boys can hang out with girls. That's okay. You don't have to just hang out with your group. And in fact, it's a positive if you hang out with people who think differently than you. The last thing he warned of in his farewell address was the danger of foreign entanglements, aka the risk to our nation of becoming overly attached or overly opposed to other nations. To this, I give our rating a yes and a no. Because most of the conflicts that our nation has been in with other countries has been to preserve stability and freedom at home or to our allies. But in that same vein, because we are sometimes supporting allies, that leans towards that attachment to another country, or an attachment or an opposition to a country. For example, one of our allies is Taiwan. If China was to attack Taiwan, we would be obliged to help them. And some people think that's a good thing, some people think that's a bad thing, but that's definitely not in line with what George Washington wanted. An example of this in your own life would be, if you have two friends who don't like each other and decide to fight, you don't necessarily have to get involved. You can let them fight, but particularly picking a side and joining in is probably not always a good idea. Now let's move on to some birthdays. We actually had 2 birthdays over the weekend that we'll talk about, and 1 birthday today. So on Saturday, September 18th, Haley Grady in 3rd grade turned 9. Riley McKeithen in 4th grade turned 10 on September 19th, which was yesterday. And today, in 1st grade, Sage Crum will be turning 7. So if you see any of those folks in the hallway, make sure you wish them a very happy birthday. And that'll about wrap things up for us today, guys. So I hope you all have a great day. Work very hard, learn as much as you can, and I'll see you here tomorrow. This is Snipes Daily News.